Kodak Black was found slumped over the wheel of a $300,000 black Bentley, mouth full of crushed white powder, parked in front of his own family's house, completely unconscious. He wasn't robbed, he wasn't shot, nobody ran up on him. Kodak Black knocked himself out cold on Percocets in Pompano Beach, Florida. In the same neighborhood he rapped his whole career about escaping. This man at his peak was pulling in $50 million. He had a record deal with Atlantic. He had platinum after platinum. He had Tunnel Vision, ZZ, Super Gremlin, chart-topping records that ran the whole culture for years. He had his own label, Sniper Gang. He had real estate. He had the cars, the jewelry, the deals. Kodak Black built himself from nothing, from the Golden Acres housing project, from welfare, from a childhood so brutal that most people wouldn't have survived it. And he actually made it out. And then he chewed 100 Percocets a day until the money was gone. Not 10, not 20. 100 Percocets every single day. He said it himself on stage at a show in Los Angeles in front of thousands of fans. "I was chewing 100 perks a day, man. Average like 40. Average." He said that, publicly, like it was just a fact of life. And here's what's wild. That wasn't even the bottom. By the time he was bragging about cutting down to 40, he had already spent $350,000 on rehab. He had already been arrested multiple times. He had already tested positive for fentanyl on a court-ordered drug test and stood in front of a judge begging not to go back to prison. The net worth numbers tell the story better than anything. At his peak, multiple sources put Kodak Black's value somewhere between $25 million and $50 million. Today, in 2025, some financial tracking sites estimate his net worth at $600,000. Not $600 million, not $60 million. $600,000. That is a collapse of almost everything he built. And the reason isn't bad investments. It's not bad management. It's not the industry. It's one thing: opioid addiction. And how it ate his money, his freedom, his career, and almost his life, one pill at a time. In this video, we are going to walk through exactly how that happened, step by step. We're going to talk about the bullet that started it all, the Super Bowl party shooting in 2022 that put a hole in his leg and a prescription in his hand. We're going to talk about how a legal painkiller turned into 100 pills a day. We're going to talk about the arrests, the oxycodone bust, the fentanyl positive, the $75,000 cash and 31 pills found in his car the moment he was found unconscious in his Bentley. We're going to talk about the $350,000 he burned trying to get clean, and we're going to talk about what's left, or what isn't. Because Kodak's story isn't just a rap story. It's a story about how fast everything can unravel. It's a story about pain, prescription pills, and a system that handed an opioid to a traumatized man from the projects and then arrested him for being addicted to it. And it's a story that nobody is telling the right way. So let's get into it, for real. Before we get into the addiction and the collapse, you gotta understand who we're actually talking about. Because a lot of people know Kodak Black as the controversial rapper. They know him as the guy who's always getting arrested, always saying something wild, always in the news for the wrong reasons, but that's not the full picture. Not even close. Kodak Black, born Deuce and Octave on June 11, 1997 in Pompano Beach, Florida, came up in a public housing project called Golden Acres. His father was Haitian, but Kodak never really knew him. He was raised entirely by his mother, Marceline, in a project where poverty wasn't just a condition, it was the culture. No cap, this man started rapping at 12 years old, joined his first rap group called Brutal Youngs, and was breaking into people's houses with his boys just to survive. In 5th grade, he got expelled for fighting. By middle school, he had an arrest for car theft. By the time most kids are worried about high school exams, Kodak was navigating the streets of Pompano Beach like a veteran. And here's what you need to understand about that environment. It leaves marks, psychological marks that don't go away when the money comes. Trauma from poverty, from violence, from growing up without stability. That stuff doesn't disappear the first time you sign a record deal. It sits in you, and it comes out, one way or another. But Kodak rapped his way out. His first mixtape, Project Baby, dropped in 2013 and went crazy in the Miami streets. Then Heart of the Projects, then Institution. Each tape stacking more buzz, more fans, more industry attention. The real turning point came when Drake posted a video on Instagram of himself dancing to Kodak's track Skirt. That went viral overnight and exposed Kodak to a global audience of millions. Atlantic Records came calling immediately. That's how fast it happened. By 2017, his debut album Painting Pictures hit number 3 on the Billboard 200. ZZ with Travis Scott and Offset went triple platinum. And then Super Gremlin, a track where Kodak openly rapped about taking fake Percocets, became one of the biggest songs of 2022, peaking at number 3 on the Hot 100. That song made him tens of millions of dollars in streaming alone. But here's what really went down. The same song that was making Kodak millions of dollars was also describing the addiction he was living inside. He was rapping about fake perks while consuming real perks by the hundred, and nobody around him stopped it. Nobody could, because by the time Super Gremlin hit, the addiction was already years deep. Let's go back to where the crack started showing. And this is important because what happened to Kodak didn't happen overnight. This wasn't one bad decision. This was a series of events, each one making the next one worse. Each one pulling him deeper into something he couldn't get out of on his own. Rewind to 2019. Kodak is at the height of his commercial power. Music is flying, money is coming in, and then he catches a federal case, falsifying paperwork on required firearms documentation at a Miami gun store. That's not a minor charge, that's federal. He gets sentenced to 46 months in federal prison. He's 22 years old in the middle of the hottest run of his career, and he's going to prison. Now here's where it gets important for the addiction story. What Kodak went through in federal prison was brutal. His attorney, Bradford Cohen, later stated on record that Kodak was subjected to abuse while incarcerated. Cohen specifically said those injuries, those prison experiences left physical and emotional damage on his client that followed him out the door when he eventually got released. That's on record. Those were real injuries, real trauma, on top of the childhood trauma he already carried. Then in January 2021, Donald Trump, on his last day in office, commuted the rest of Kodak's sentence. He walked out of federal prison with about half his sentence still on the table. He came home. He released Last Day In, Every Balmain, and the Haitian Boy Kodak mixtape. He dropped Super Gremlin, and it became one of the biggest songs in the country. The comeback looked real. But here's where it gets crazy. The prison experience left real physical damage. And within a year of coming home, something happened that changed everything. February 2022, Super Bowl week in Los Angeles. It's the biggest party week in the country. Justin Bieber is throwing a private concert. Drake is there. Khloe Kardashian is there. The Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood is packed with A-list names. And Kodak Black is outside when everything goes sideways. According to his attorney, Bradford Cohen, Kodak was standing outside when a fight broke out near him. He went to help someone who was being attacked, and that's when the shooting happened. Multiple shots fired. Kodak took a bullet directly to the leg. His attorney confirmed. Kodak was struck in the leg. It was not life-threatening. He will make a full recovery, and he is in stable condition. He survived. He got surgery. He recovered physically, at least on the surface. And then the doctors gave him what they give everybody who just had a bullet pulled out of their leg: prescription opioid painkillers, specifically Percocet, which is oxycodone combined with acetaminophen. Strong, addictive, effective at killing pain. And for someone with Kodak's psychology, someone who had already been grinding through trauma since childhood, who had just come out of federal prison, who had already been through hell and back, those pills hit different. Kodak himself confirmed this connection publicly. On Instagram Live in December 2023, after another drug arrest, he said straight up, "I'll tell God himself, I do perks and shit like that, but them was my medicine prescribed to me." He admitted it himself. The Percocets he ended up abusing were originally the pills prescribed to him after getting shot. And then, this is the part that's wild, he also admitted that even before the shooting, he had already started damn near abusing Percocets when they were prescribed to him for something else. That means the shooting wasn't where it started. It was where it went nuclear. He already had a relationship with opioids before that bullet hit him. The shooting just gave him a new prescription, a new supply, and a reason nobody could argue with. This is how opioid addiction works, and it's important to understand this. The drug doesn't make you feel high the same way other substances do at first. It kills pain. Physical pain, emotional pain, all of it. For someone carrying the weight Kodak was carrying, the projects, the prison, the streets, the industry pressure, the shooting, those pills provided relief that nothing else was providing. And the relief stops working after a while, so you take more and more and more, until you're at 100 Percocets a day and you don't even remember what sober feels like. His attorney put it plainly when speaking to the media about Kodak's legal situation. His client, like many people across the country, became dependent on those prescribed pills. That's the addiction pipeline that's destroyed millions of American lives, and Kodak Black walked straight into it. Here's what the next 2 years looked like. And pay attention, because this is where you see how addiction and legal trouble feed each other until they become the same thing. July 2022. 5 months after getting shot at the Super Bowl party, Kodak is in a car in Broward County, Florida, when police pull him over for dark window tint. They detect the smell of marijuana, search the vehicle, and find 31 oxycodone tablets and nearly $75,000 in cash. He is charged with trafficking and possession of a controlled substance. Now, this is key. Trafficking charges for oxycodone is serious. That's not a misdemeanor. That's not just personal use. Prosecutors later alleged he was carrying between 14 and 25 grams of oxycodone when he was stopped. Kodak gets out on bond with regular drug testing as a condition of his release. And here's where things start getting real, because he fails the drug tests. He can't stop using even while facing trafficking charges, even with his supervised federal release on the line, even knowing that one dirty test could send him back to prison. That's not a choice. That's the grip of addiction. February 2023. A court orders Kodak to test. He refuses a second drug test. The judge hauls him into court. Tests come back. He's positive for fentanyl, not Percocet. Fentanyl. A Florida judge orders him to attend drug rehabilitation for 30 days. He's allowed to stay out until March 7th so he can perform at Rolling Loud near Los Angeles. He performs, then he goes to rehab. 30 days, court ordered. But let's be clear, 30 days is not enough for the level of dependency Kodak had developed. It never is for opioids. The withdrawal alone takes weeks, and the psychological dependency can last years. 30 days is a start at best, and Kodak was not starting from a good place. He comes out of rehab, he goes back to music, he releases more content. To the outside world, he looks like he's recovering. But then we get to December 2023, and the bottom falls out completely. December 7th, 2023, Plantation, Florida, a neighborhood right outside Fort Lauderdale. A plantation police officer named Adam Stern finds a black Bentley blocking a road, taillights on. He approaches and finds Kodak Black behind the wheel, completely unconscious. When the officer wakes him up and checks him, Kodak has white powder in his mouth, white rock-like substances on the ground around the car. According to the arrest report, Kodak himself told the officer it was Percocet. He was transparent about it. That's Percocet, that's my prescription. The officer field tested the substance and claimed it tested positive for cocaine. Kodak was arrested for cocaine possession and evidence tampering. Kodak immediately went on Instagram Live and denied the cocaine angle with everything he had. Hell fuck no, bruh. Hell nah. I was on the lean, homie. I was asleep in front of my family house, bro. He denied cocaine specifically, but in doing so, he confirmed everything else. That he was on lean, codeine-based cough syrup, that he had crushed Percocets on him, that he was unconscious in his car in front of his family's house. The arrest triggered his federal supervised release, meaning he got locked up in federal custody as well as the state case. He sat in jail for 2 months. His attorney fought hard, and eventually lab tests came back confirming what Kodak said, so it was oxycodone, not cocaine. The Broward County judge dismissed the charge. He walked in February 2024, but 2 months in jail, again, legal fees, again, all while his money was hemorrhaging. This is the section people need to really sit with, because Kodak Black at his peak wasn't just rich, he was generationally wealthy rich, or at least he should have been. Let's look at the income side first. Tunnel vision. Top 10 Billboard Hot 100, certified platinum multiple times. ZZ with Travis Scott and Offset, triple platinum. Super Gremlin, peaked at number 3 on the Hot 100, one of the biggest songs of 2022. His debut album Painting Pictures went platinum. Dying to Live went platinum. Back for Everything peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200. He had a record deal with Atlantic Records, his own label Sniper Gang, merchandise, brand endorsements. His Spotify alone has 25 million monthly listeners. He performed at Rolling Loud, Summer Smash, Clout Festival, and dozens of other major events with high-paying ticket prices. The math on all of that is enormous. Music industry experts estimated Kodak's peak net worth at anywhere from $25 million on the conservative end to $50 million or more if you factored in all revenue streams. Some sources even pushed higher. Now look at the drain. Legal fees first. Every arrest means a lawyer. Bradford Cohen, Kodak's attorney, is not a public defender. He's a high-powered federal defense attorney. Federal defense cases, especially weapons charges and drug trafficking, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars each, sometimes millions depending on how complex the case gets. Kodak has had multiple major legal cases: the 2019 federal weapons case, the 2022 oxycodone trafficking case, the 2023 fentanyl probation violation, the December 2023 cocaine that was oxycodone case. Each one, attorney fees, court costs, bond money, appeals. The 2019 federal case alone likely cost him several $100,000 in legal representation before Trump commuted the sentence. Then there's the rehab money. Kodak didn't go to some county facility. When he said on Instagram Live, "I paid $350,000 in shit to get clean and get better," that's real money. High-end rehabilitation centers that cater to people with the level of addiction Kodak had. 100 Percocets a day with fentanyl positives. Those facilities charge $20,000 to $80,000 per month. Some go higher. He said he went to rehab voluntarily, multiple times, before the court even ordered him to go. 3 or 4 stints at those prices, and you're looking at $350,000 real fast. Gone. Then there's the court-mandated drug testing, monitoring, bond payments. When Kodak was arrested in July 2022, his bond got set at $75,000 initially. After the December 2023 arrest triggered federal supervised release issues, a judge raised his bond to $250,000, $250,000 just to walk out the door while your case is pending. Then you factor in what addiction does to earning capacity. Every time Kodak got locked up, that's concert dates missed, appearances canceled, brand deal conversations that ended before they started because no company wants to put their name on someone who keeps getting arrested for drug possession. Studio sessions that never happened. Albums that got delayed. His 5th album, Pistols and Pearls, dropped in 2023, but the commercial momentum that could have built on Super Gremlin got interrupted by the arrests, the legal drama, and the public perception of a man who was clearly not okay. And here's the kicker. Kodak was flashing money publicly even as it was disappearing. That's something you see a lot with addiction, maintaining the performance of wealth while the actual wealth evaporates. The Bentley, the jewelry, the cash he had on him when he got arrested. But $75,000 in cash in a car isn't generational wealth. It's the last of what's left, carried around because you don't trust banks or because you don't have an accountant left who can tell you the truth about your balance. The result of all of this? Estimates in 2025 put Kodak Black's actual net worth somewhere between $600,000 and $1 million. One source, networthspot.com, which tracks YouTube and music streaming revenue specifically, put his figure at under $1 million as of late 2025. For a man who was worth $25 to $50 million at his peak, that is a financial catastrophe. That is decades of work, hit records, sold-out shows, platinum certifications, all of it eaten by pills, lawyers, and the system that came for him every time he relapsed. Let's talk about what 100 Percocets a day actually means, because I think a lot of people hear that number and it doesn't land the right way. A standard Percocet prescription for post-surgical pain, after something like, say, getting shot in the leg, is maybe 5 to 10 milligrams of oxycodone taken every 4 to 6 hours. That's 4 to 6 pills a day at the high end. That's what doctors consider a therapeutic dose for serious pain. Kodak was taking 100 a day. That is roughly 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams of oxycodone daily, depending on pill strength. The lethal dose of oxycodone for someone without tolerance is estimated to be around 80 milligrams. Kodak was consuming 10 to 12 times that amount per day. He survived that because opioid tolerance works in a brutal way. Your body adapts to the drug, and you need more and more to get the same effect. What would kill someone with no tolerance barely makes a dent for someone who's been building that tolerance for months or years. But the physiological damage is still happening. Your organs, your liver, your kidneys, your heart, they're still processing all of that. The acetaminophen in Percocet alone, at those doses, causes severe liver damage over time. The oxycodone suppresses your respiratory system. At 100 pills a day, you're operating on a razor edge. And he knew it. That's what makes it even heavier. At that Los Angeles show in June 2024, when he addressed it, he said, "I was chewing 100 perks a day, man. Average like 40. Average. If I was fucking with them fake shots, bruh, I'd have been dead." He understood that the only reason he was alive was because his pills were real prescription oxycodone and not the fentanyl-laced counterfeit perks that have killed hundreds of thousands of people. He acknowledged that directly. And then he turned to the audience and said, "And this part is important because it shows you there's a real person in there, not just a cautionary tale. I don't want y'all to hear that and take that and feel like it's okay to do that shit, you feel me?" He was standing on stage in front of thousands of fans, and he was genuinely trying to warn them away from where he had been, That's not nothing. That's a man with enough self-awareness to see the wreckage around him, even while still standing in it. But then contrast that with the Instagram Live where he was handing his phone to someone, jumping a fence and shouting, "Bitch, I ain't sober. I look sober. I'm never sober, bitch." For what? For what? Look at this money. Look at all this cash. Sober for what? I'm too young to die sober. Same man, different day. That is what active addiction looks like. Moments of clarity, moments of denial, cycling back and forth until something breaks. And the Kai Cenat Twitch stream situation in late 2024 showed where his head was. He appeared on the stream and his behavior alarmed viewers badly enough that it went viral. Fans flooded the comments concerned. Kodak's response, "I take one perk and y'all be so fucking butthurt." He doubled down live on Instagram after that, took another pill in front of the camera and said, "Give me drugs and I'll chill. When I'm not high, when I ain't higher than a bitch, I'm vibing. When I'm high, I'm in my coma, bruh. I ain't talking to nobody, cause I'm getting high." That statement right there is the definition of opioid dependency. He wasn't saying drugs make me feel good. He was saying drugs are the only state in which he can function. He was describing a coma as the desired outcome. That is a man in a medical crisis, broadcasting it to the world, and the world mostly just made memes about it. We need to talk about what gets missed when we focus only on the money. Because Kodak Black's story is about more than a declining net worth. It's about what opioid addiction does to a human being, to their relationships, their identity, their children, their community. Kodak has children. He mentioned them specifically in that December 2023 Instagram Live when he was talking about spending $350,000 on rehab, when he was explaining why he wanted to get clean, when he was trying to defend himself not just to his fans but to himself. "I got children, homie, and I have to be here for them." That's not a rapper doing PR. That's a father who is scared. That's a man who can see what he's doing to his own life and his own legacy and genuinely does not want it to end this way. And the people around him could see it too. R&B singer Ray J, who has had his own public struggles, watched Kodak appear on the Drink Champs podcast and came away genuinely alarmed. He went on record saying, "Yo, Whack 100, let's figure out how we can help this guy instead of watching him self-destruct." That's not shade. That's someone who recognized what they were looking at and got scared for another human being. Wallow and Gilly from $1 Million Worth of Game, two men who have their own first-hand knowledge of addiction and the streets, went to personally visit Kodak to offer support and encourage him to get his life together. That visit went public. These are not people who do that for attention. They went because they were genuinely worried that they might not have another chance. And Kodak's attorney, Bradford Cohen, who has been by his side through every single one of these legal battles for years, gave an emotional statement about his client after the December 2023 situation that doesn't read like legal boilerplate. It reads like a man who is exhausted and heartbroken watching someone he cares about destroy themselves. The job of an attorney is never easy. That statement can be amended to read, "The job of an attorney who cares about your case and your well-being is never easy." This is a lawyer who has fought hard for Kodak, sued the Bureau of Prisons on his behalf, and has watched him walk out of every legal victory and straight back into danger. That's the human cost that doesn't show up in the net worth calculations. The people around Kodak who love him, who have fought for him, who keep showing up for him, and who have to watch him burn it all down. Here's what really went down with the system, and we need to be real about this because it matters. Kodak Black grew up in poverty so severe that he was breaking into houses in elementary school to survive. He spent time in the streets, which carries its own trauma. He went to federal prison at 22 years old, where according to his own attorney, he experienced abuse. He came home carrying physical and psychological wounds from incarceration. He got shot at a party and was prescribed opioids. He became dependent on those opioids, a pattern that has been documented to affect millions of Americans across every demographic. And then when he showed up with those same prescribed opioids in his possession, either in a car or in his mouth or on his person, the system responded by arresting him repeatedly, charging him with trafficking, with possession, with cocaine possession that turned out to be oxycodone. A police officer field tested the substance, got a false positive for cocaine, testified to that in federal court, and Kodak sat in jail for 2 months before a lab proved the officer was wrong. 2 months. His attorney called it a coordinated takedown. He alleged that FBI Special Agent James Mitchell and Broward County officials were specifically targeting his client. Whether or not that's true, the pattern of repeated arrests for the same substance, prescription oxycodone that Kodak himself told every arresting officer was prescribed, does raise real questions about how the system was engaging with him. Compare that to how prescription opioid addiction has been handled in wealthier, whiter communities, where the response has been rehab centers, intervention, public sympathy campaigns, documentary films, Senate hearings. The same drug, different neighborhood, different skin color. To be clear, Kodak's addiction is Kodak's addiction. His choices have consequences. Nobody forced him to take 100 perks a day. But the conditions that created his vulnerability, poverty, trauma, incarceration, a shooting, those weren't accidents. And the system's response of repeated arrests and federal supervised release violations for prescription drug dependency isn't treatment. It's punishment, and punishment alone has never fixed addiction. Not once, not anywhere. We cannot tell this story without spending serious time on Super Gremlin because the irony of what that song represents is almost too heavy to hold. Super Gremlin dropped in late 2021, peaked at number 3 on the Hot 100 in 2022, and became one of the defining rap songs of that year. The song went viral on TikTok. It was everywhere. And in that song, Kodak Black rapped directly about fake Percocets, romanticizing the drug use, making it sound cool, making it part of the aesthetic of his music. Later at that Los Angeles show in June 2024, Kodak addressed this directly and he was visibly ashamed of it. It's sad though, bruh, because it's like that shit. The bar came to mind so quick. I'm like, damn, I don't want to say this shit, but I know this bitch gonna go in. But we ain't gonna play like that, bruh. Let that sink in. He knew in the studio while writing the song that he was glamorizing something dangerous. He knew he didn't want to say it, and he said it anyway because he knew it would perform well commercially, and it did. It went triple platinum and made him millions of dollars from a song about the thing that was actively destroying him. That is one of the most brutal ironies in modern hip-hop history. He got paid to advertise his own addiction to an audience that included teenagers who would take that imagery as aspirational. And then he stood on stage and told those same fans, I don't want y'all to hear that and take that and feel like it's okay to do that shit. Trying to walk back the damage. But the song is still out there. It's still streaming. It still has hundreds of millions of plays. The money from those streams is still going somewhere. Just not to a man whose net worth has collapsed to under $1 million. So where is Kodak Black right now? Let's be real about what we know and what we don't. In terms of music, he's still releasing content. In 2024, he dropped the EP Dios en Octave, going back to his birth name for the project, which feels significant. He dropped singles including Catch Fire, Hit Stick, This Time, and Stressed Out, the last title especially. He collaborated with Fivio Foreign and Donald Trump on a song called ONBOA47RD. He's still active on streaming platforms. His 25 million monthly Spotify listeners haven't completely abandoned him. But the commercial impact is not the same. The cultural moment that Super Gremlin represented, that level of mainstream chart dominance, has not been replicated. The arrests, the addiction narrative, the erratic public behavior, the Twitch stream incident, all of it has made him a liability to the kind of mainstream crossover opportunities that create real generational wealth. In terms of sobriety, the picture is complicated. In July 2024, he gave what his team described as a positive update on his sobriety journey. I'm more proud of myself, he reportedly said. He told fans he had been working to cut down and that going from 100 pills a day to a lower number was something he was proud of. And to be fair, for someone who was chewing 100 Percocets a day, any reduction is a real achievement. Opioid withdrawal is one of the most physically brutal experiences a human body can go through. Doing it voluntarily, without full medical support, is genuinely dangerous. But then there was the Kai Cenat stream incident in late 2024, the ongoing behavior that concerned people publicly, the statements about never being sober. The reality is that opioid addiction doesn't follow a straight line. Recovery isn't linear. People relapse. People struggle for years before getting fully clean, if they get clean at all. Kodak is 27 years old. He's been dealing with this for at least 3 years in documented form, and likely longer in private. In terms of legal status, as of early 2025, Kodak Kodak's federal supervised release appears to be ongoing given the commuted sentence from 2019. He was pardoned by Trump in a broader sense when Trump returned to office, and their relationship, which included Kodak being invited to the White House for Black History Month in 2025 and selling MAGA-themed merchandise on his Sniper Gang website, has given him some political protection. But political protection doesn't fix addiction. The net worth situation is what it is, under $1 million by most credible estimates. That's a man who, at 27, should have had decades of wealth ahead of him. Instead, he's spent his late teens and early 20s running through one of the most dramatic financial destructions in hip-hop history. Not through bad investments or industry exploitation, but through the physical, legal, and economic cost of opioid addiction. Here's what Kodak Black's story changes, or should change, in the conversation about addiction in hip-hop. For years, the rap industry has had a complicated relationship with substance use. From lean to Xanax to Percocets, pills became part of the sound, part of the aesthetic, part of what a certain generation of rap was built on. Lil Peep died from a fentanyl overdose in 2017. Juice WRLD died from an accidental overdose in 2019. Mac Miller died from an accidental overdose in 2018. These are not obscure cases. These are some of the biggest names in the genre. And each time there is an outpouring of grief and a conversation about drug culture and hip-hop that lasts about 2 weeks before it gets forgotten. Kodak Black is still alive. That's what makes his story different and, in some ways, more important to talk about. Because we can still have the conversation while he's here. We can look at what happened. The shooting, the prescription, the dependency, the 100 pills a day, the arrests, the $350,000 in rehab, the $50 million collapsing to under $1 million, and we can say clearly this is what prescription opioid addiction looks like when it goes unchecked. This is the cost. Kodak Black is not a bad person. He's not even a reckless person in the simple sense. He's a person who grew up in one of the worst environments this country produces, who used his talent to claw his way out, who got shot at a party and was handed pills to deal with the pain, and who ended up in the same trap that has swallowed millions of Americans who never had a record deal and never made the news. The difference between Kodak and those millions is that his destruction happened in public. Every arrest, every court date, every Instagram live breakdown, on camera, documented, shared, commented on, turned into content. While he was living through one of the hardest things a human being can go through, people were watching it like entertainment. That's its own kind of trauma. What the hip-hop community should take from Kodak's story is not just a cautionary tale about drugs, it's a lesson about what we normalize. When Super Gremlin was topping the charts and he was rapping about fake perks, nobody stopped the presses. Nobody said, hold on, is this man okay? The money was coming in, the streams were up, the song was a hit, the addiction was working, commercially speaking, for everybody except the addict. And when the addiction stopped being profitable, when the arrests started, when the behavior got erratic, when the net worth started dropping, suddenly everyone had opinions. Suddenly it was a story. Suddenly it was content. That's not on Kodak, that's on how the industry treats artists. Section 13, the final word. Kodak Black is 27 years old. He is alive. He still has music in him. You can hear it in the Dieu Son Octave EP, in the vulnerability of going back to his birth name for a project. He still has fans who love him. He still has people around him who want him to make it. The question is whether he can get clean, truly clean, before the physical toll of what he's been doing to his body becomes irreversible. At 100 Percocets a day, you are doing damage to your liver, your kidneys, your heart, your neurological system that doesn't fully undo itself even after sobriety. The longer that continues, the harder recovery becomes on a purely biological level. The $50 million is mostly gone. The legal battles have drained what was left. The net worth that should have set up his children's children has been consumed by pills and lawyers and court fees and rehab, but money can be rebuilt. Artists have come back from financial ruin before. What can't be rebuilt is time. What can't be rebuilt is health once it's fully gone. What can't be undone is a death. And right now, Kodak is still on the right side of that line, but barely. His story is not over. But the version of the story where $50 million becomes zero because of opioid addiction, that chapter is complete. It happened. It's documented. It's real. And it should be talked about loudly in every conversation about drugs and hip-hop and what this industry does to the people it profits from. Kodak Black came from nothing and built something extraordinary. Then addiction took most of it back. Not the streets, not bad deals, not record labels. Addiction. One prescription at a time. That's the story, no cap.